This is part of my life plan. I had to figure this out. We agreed before we were born to try and remember what it is we came here to do. Now, I am the possessor of that knowledge which I'm about to give to the world. This applies to everyone. Know this for sure. All 8 billion people.
I'm here today with Mark Fiorentino. He has had a series of spiritual experiences in his life. He has also been obsessed with Einstein's unified field theory. His life path has really revolved around bringing the science back to the spiritual.
Good to be here. I'm looking forward to this conversation. We've got a lot of important information to reveal.
Yes. So let's start at the beginning with your first experience with a psychic.
Yeah, it started out when I was around 19 years old, and it was just on a lark, just for fun, because I was sitting in my community college class of media technology, and the professor was a cool guy. His name was Steve Goldman, and he was talking about this town called Casadega. And I said, "Oh, that sounds interesting. There's nothing but psychics in this town, and it's in Florida. I can get to it." So I talked a bunch of my friends and into going there one weekend in the fall. I believe it was in October, and it was a blustery, gray, overcast kind of day. And we went there on the way to Daytona Beach. So we were just going to party and have fun and so forth. And I thought, I think it'd be fun to have they didn't call it readings, at least not back in the day. It was fortunes. You get a fortune told. That sounds like fun. And we went there. We drove there. And when we got there, it was nobody to be found. Very small town located in a forest. And a limb blew off the tree and landed on the other guy's cars. They got scared and they left. They left for Daytona. So it was just me and another guy named Jeff Jones. And we knocked on some doors until somebody let us in. And her name was Martha McKay. I still remember being on the front porch and walking in, very nice, your classic old lady psychic. She definitely had the gift. And she revealed my future in general terms with some specifics that did come true. Everything she foretold came true. That's when I learned about having spiritual advisors, spirit guides, or whatever, because she told me I had two of them, a male and a female. But they told her some stuff. And what I've learned is a lot of times the really good mediums, they can have conversations in their head with the spirit guides. And sometimes they tell the guide not to tell them this. And that happened in mine. And what happened was I got my normal reading. She correctly predicted the marriage, two children, my job in the future at IBM and electronics and all that. All that's all right. But I asked her one question about would I be happy in the marriage? And she just got real still and just shook her head like this and said nothing more. No explanation, no embellishment. I says, huh, I'm going to take it, but I'm a little worried about the way that was answered because the marriage did go bad eventually after many years and we got divorced. Part of the plan, nothing to complain about now. I know that's part of the plan. We had to go through that, me and the children and my first wife. But the next guy came in and things got interesting. He got his reading, and then we got in the car and we drove to Daytona. On the way there, we're talking about it, and he says, "Boy, that's really interesting about you, Mark." And I said, huh, "What are you talking about?" And I says, I just had a standard kind of, marriage, children, that, nothing unusual." She said, "You're going to be famous someday. You're going to discover something or invent something and, be very famous." I says, huh, I wonder why she didn't tell me that. That's kind of important information. She tells you, I don't hear about it until I'm in the car on the way there. So now I can't ask any questions. And that's why it was done that way. Because they must have said, this is going to happen, big important thing in the future, but you can't tell him because he's going to want to dig and do it right away, which is kind of what I tried early in life. After a while, after so many years, I just didn't worry about it anymore. It went 45 more years before I got to this point. But along the way, that was the start. There was a hint that always was kind of in the back of my mind. But then I met another psychic, very good one. June Riggs was her name. And she was helping me and my wife with troubles during, our my first marriage. And that psychic gave me some very important evidence for everybody here to listen to learn, to know for sure there is an afterlife, there is a God, there are guardian angels. So June Riggs, my first wife, and I sit down. This woman doesn't know me. She's visiting from another state even, but I was recommended by our counselor to meet with this because I had unusual circumstances. This whole thing with the future prediction was clashing with what my wife was doing with finances and stuff. And I was getting concerned that, we were going to run out of money and I wouldn't be able to do experiments and so forth. So anyway, we sit down and June says, your mother's here and she wants to tell you about, she's been in your bedroom at night. She's heard you. She's sat in the golden yellow chair that you asked her to sit in. And that's exactly what I did when I was praying at night. And not even my wife knew that. I never spoke that aloud. How did she know that detail? There could only be one way. My mother's still alive, even though she has passed away. People don't really die. They're back in the other realm, the afterlife, whatever you want to call it, that other dimension. And they're communicating and they're able to actually communicate through these psychic mediums. And that's rock solid evidence to the existence of the afterlife. And they hear everything we think, everything they see, everything we do. There's no secrets, there's no cover up, there's not, everything is recorded into the book of life. And I wanted to share that with everybody and to let them know that this is a real deal. This is really happening. And she also gave me some more information. She said, in your final days, you'll be a spiritual teacher and advisor. That's the first thing out of the mouth of Martha McKay. They say the exact same words again. And another psychic after that, Patty Groninger, who I met in Charlotte, also says this very same thing right at the beginning of the first time I talked with her. Now, June goes on, I finally ask her, there was some sort of a prediction made about something in the future, something I'm going to invent. She said, yes, but you're not ready yet. You don't have everything you need. So don't try to, because I'm trying to build, inventions and stuff. And so, okay, so there's a confirmation. Another one even before that, Russ Burgess, who comes to Polk County, where I used to live in Florida, does demonstrations and psychic readings and hypnosis. And he picked my name out of a hat. He's blindfolded and everything in front of this big audience. And as soon as he picks up the first paper out of the hat, the hairs on the back of my neck go up. And I say, he's got my paper. I just know it. And he repeats the question that I wrote on there again about the invention idea. And again, he says, yeah, that's going to happen, but it's going to take a lot longer than you think. And that's all he left me with. So there's another confirmation. And then in that same time period, I go to a very famous psychic that was giving a lecture at the community college named Ann Gaiman, who is now retired. I go to her because my mother is very sick and I'm thinking of dropping out of the tech school that I was in and just going to take care of her. And I wanted to see what the spirit guides had to say about that. And when I was walking up to her before the lecture, she was sitting in the back and I was just going to ask her that one question. She looked at me and her eyes went wide open. And she said, as you were approaching, I saw these angels rush by you in a frenzy, in which is unusual for people on the other side. They're not usually that concerned. Everything's okay, everything's, but they wanted to make sure I knew, do not quit school. You need to do that. You need to not stop. They answered it even before I could get the question out. And so there's this series. There's Patty Groninger, who again confirms it. Something special is happening in the background, having to do with my life path, I'm sure. And I don't know if you have any psychic abilities, but I probably told you already too much, unless you could say you're getting something now, but you already know all this stuff. So Patty also confirms it in a manner, several different ways. We had many conversations because I was going through a living hell at that time, personally speaking. And then finally, the last one, the major one, was Tamara Calder Richardson, who was an NDEer as well. And she gave me lots of details, and I have all that recorded. And at some point, I guess I will release it when the time is right. But there was lots of confirmation about my life plan and what the strange and obscure thing that I'm here to do. So that gets us up to date quickly, condensing all of that. There's more things that go on. There was also my meeting with my spirit guides in my room at night, and also the time they actually saved my life, which is a very exciting episode. So that's, in my mind, that's all evidence that there is an afterlife. And like you say, this is the dream world, and that's the real world. And it's really hard for us to physically get over when we're in this body, this avatar. This seems so real. This seems, especially to scientists and intellectuals, that this is the only world. This is the only thing. This is what's real, and nothing could be further from the truth. This is just a little microcosm of what's out there, of infinite universes, infinite dimensions, all designed by the power of intention through God, the universal being in heaven.
Mark, thank you so much for sharing. And I would love to come back to the story of your life path and the reason that you're here. But first, would you mind sharing about when you met your spirit guides in your bedroom? That sounds like something I would love to hear about in my guests too.
Yeah, it's a good question. You're right, because it's very similar to what you were doing. You were praying. That night, at that time of my life, I was going through a living hell, a divorce, a second relationship with a woman that was really putting me through the ringers. I was being attacked on two fronts. People at work said I would walk down the hall like a zombie, just in my own head, just trying to figure all this out. I was in incredible pain. I was missing my children. I was stuck in a little apartment and just trying to get through the day without, coming totally unglued. So that night, I gave a prayer to my guardian angel. I said, I need to know you're there, you're real. Show me some sort of sign, something. And then I fell asleep. During the night, I woke up, but there's certain times when I wake up, it's like half my brain is on and the other half is in this delta state or something. And I hear this buzzing kind of a sound. And even though my eyes are closed, I can see these pinkish orange orbs moving about the bedroom. Now I'm sleeping with this arm forward, outstretched, and the hand is open, and I feel someone squeeze my hand. This is the night of the prayer. Somebody squeezing my hand, and then I hear something in my head, a voice in my head, not my own, except it's distorted. It's very mechanical sounding, vibratory, but the speech wasn't getting through. It sounded very like zhing zhing. And I said, Mark, calm down and focus. This is not evil. There's nothing bad here. There's somebody trying to get a message to you, probably your spirit guides. And I felt the squeeze in my hand again. And then I heard the voice. At the third time, all of a sudden, it just like the fog lifted and cleared away. And then I could hear what they were saying. They would squeeze my hand and then they would say, "Did you feel that?" And they'd squeeze my hand and then they would repeat it. "Did you feel that?" And then in my head, knowing that this is all psychic, I'm saying, I don't have to speak out loud. I speak back, "Yes, I felt it. I felt it. Thank you." Thank you. And basically that's all that happened. That's all that I remember. But basically my prayer was answered that night, right away. And they let me know that I wasn't alone because I was in real bad shape. And I'm sure they were worried that, some, anything bad was going to happen with my health or whatever. And so really, that's actually the second time. The first time was when they saved my life. The male spoke to me in my left ear as I was driving the car. And all he said was, "Don't go that way." Because I was at a T intersection. I was going to choice to go left or choice to go right. And I'm almost always went left because that was a peaceful, quiet roads, a little less stressful. And instead of listening to him, I didn't because I couldn't believe that was real, what was happening. And so I went that way and I said, "Look, something trouble is up ahead. It's maybe going to be a head-on collision or going through a light. So be careful going through lights. Make sure you look both ways and it's clear and look ahead. Keep looking ahead." And sure enough, three-quarters of the way home, I'm on a 2-lane stretch of highway. It's absolutely straight load. And I see this truck starting to swerve wildly, going into our lane and going out off the road, coming back on the road. Cars are, it's a busy road and cars are steering, trying to get out of the way of this guy. And the van that was in front of me bailed out, and there he was coming right at me, thinking, should have listened to that voice. So I turned the wheel as hard as I could, and I remember us missing by inches. I slowly turned my head and looked at this guy as he went by, trying to see what the hell is going on with this guy. And then he spins out and stops in the middle of the road, and it's over. And I'm sitting there in the ditch on the side of the road saying, "Mark, next time somebody tells you not to go that way, listen to them." So I went home and I told my wife and I apologized. I knew it was my spirit guides. "Well, you warned me and I didn't listen." And I apologize for that on a lot of these shows now. But those were my instances, the main instance. There's been many other more subtle things over the years where I can hear the afterlife, like it's old-timey radio shows I hear and stuff like that. But there's those encounters, I think, were mainly there to let me know I'm not alone and to hang in there and keep going. Don't give up.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. I loved hearing about that. And I think that can be so encouraging for people who are maybe going through situations similar to yours or going through their own rough times and just wondering, is anybody out there? Is anybody looking out for me? And the answer is yes.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. This applies to everyone.
Mhm.
Know this for sure. All 8 billion people, nobody's here by themselves. They all have their guides, one or more, usually 2 to 3. So know that. If you take anything away from this conversation, take that and have comfort in that.
That's beautiful. Mark, I would love to hear about this invention or this discovery that all the psychics were telling you that you would do towards the end of your life. Has that happened yet, or is it still something you're working on?
Well, as it turns out, this is a weird story. Uh, I always went to psychics because of either health reasons or marital problems or, personal problems.
Right.
There are fakes out there, and sometimes I ran into them, and you could tell right away they get nothing right, and I just pay them and leave. Uh, but fortunately, I've been able to meet quite a few that got the real deal, and they provide evidence. in conversations. And so I was never given any specifics because I come to realize this is part of my life plan. I had to figure this out. We agreed before we were born to try and remember what it is we came here to do. So after a while, I tried to tap into the universe via mediums and get information on that. And I did get some ultimately in the very end, high details. The rest just says, if you're not ready, you don't have everything you need, it's coming later. Later is now. So what happened was I wrote this book when I retired. I says I wanted to retire and I wanted to have something to do. And I wrote this book, Master of Reality. And in there, I proposed a solution for the central cause of gravity. And I worked it out mathematically, which was surprising to me in a way because I'm not a mathematical wizard. But when I was in IBM, I did solve an equation for somebody who was in going for their master's in finite mathematics at Clemson, and they were researching this theoretical equation. And this guy just comes up to me one day and says, "Hey, I'm trying to solve this. I got a model here, but I can't get past the fourth dimension." So he showed me the equations. And he says this should go on for every dimension all the way to infinity. But it gets harder to solve that equation the higher you go up in the dimensions. There's more possibilities. It goes from hundreds to thousands to millions to billions of possibilities for this equation. And I looked at it real quick. I just looked down at it and I saw the three solutions. I said, I know what this is going to work out. So I says, look, I'll take it home and I'll work on it. And then I'll write a program and model it, test it, and I'll see what happens. So I went home, I took it and I put his equations in. These equations are supposed to generate this pattern, a unique pattern of numbers with every possibility for each dimension, power of 2, binary modulo mathematics. So it uses Boolean operators. So the equation consisted of Boolean operators. Realize most folks don't know what that is, but if you're into logic gates, AND gates, OR gates, NOR gates, those kinds of things, you put ones and zeros come out. So you get a pattern in and a pattern out. So I looked at his, saw that it was forming a geometric pattern. I said, oh, I know the answer to the next one. Within an hour, I had it. And then I says, oh, if this is the case, then the next dimension is, it's going to be a symmetrical shape. I can reformulate the equation, and this is it. And then we're in the tens of thousands possibilities, and I'm getting it on the second or third guess. So the next gets even easier because now that I know the pattern, I know how it's like it's forming like a fractal within the equation itself. The gates were, gate here, matching gate here, reverse gate here. It was a pattern. And so it was easier. And he says, now look at the pattern. Next day, he says, here's the pattern. I'm telling you what it is. You could go to infinity now. It doesn't matter what dimension. This thing just expands out into this geometry, the equation itself. And I was right. And then his teacher calls up the next day and he says, your friend, congratulate him. He discovered new math. This is not in any of the textbooks anywhere. It's a new discovery. And it was that year, that date, 1993, I says, Mark, you should give it a shot. You could do the unified field theory. Just study it, think about it, and maybe someday you'll come up with the equations. And that's what I did in that book, and that's what I'm working on right now. So I do believe I've discovered what it is I'm supposed to do, and it has to do with what Einstein was working on, who, by the way, was born on the same day as me, March 14th.
Wow.
That's how I got into the study of the unified field theory when I was 10 years old. I found out about it and I read about him and I was just fascinated by the unified field theory and his work and the man. So that's what I think it is. So that's what I'm working on now. I'm just working on this equation that Einstein was working on, which reveals the cause of particle motion, which is part of the unified field theory. I was able to discover that in fact, Einstein was working on the very same thing. and just completed that. And I have discovered yet another new equation. It's not in any textbooks, but when you apply it to the cause of particle motion, it adjusts the particle speed to be the speed of light. It's the
Mhm.
constancy factor, which has not been explainable. It's just been accepted as something that
Right.
is. We don't know. That's what Einstein said. We're going with it, and that's it. And they don't want to talk about it. But now I'm talking about it. I said, I know exactly what's happening inside of the photon that's causing the constancy, because every time you calculate it at a different wavelength, the speed should be different, but it's not. And until this other function is applied, something physically happening within the particle, the photon, you get a different speed. But once this function is applied, the photon always goes at the same speed, no matter what frequency, just as what we see in nature. And now I am the possessor of that knowledge, which I'm about to give to the world and upload to ResearchGate.
Wow, that's incredible. So I've always been fascinated with math, but I do not have any education in it besides basically a high school or very basic college education. So I will probably struggle to find the words to ask you questions about this. But I've also been fascinated with Einstein's theories since I was a child. I used to read about them in the encyclopedias, and
Mm-hmm.
I remember I understand what you're saying about the speed of light being accepted, like the speed of light is a constant, but why is that the
Why?
case? Like, why? And it affects so many different things like time and all of these other things that I don't fully understand. So, first of all, I would love to know when your research comes out because I'm very interested.
Okay, I have your email. I'll put you on the
Mhm.
list. I write a newsletter whenever I do something that I think is worthy of information. This is going to be worthy. This document, which I've been working on for 9 months, extremely hard to write. But when I write these things, I write it for the layman, not just the physics is there and the math is there, but I go into deep explanation. I explain every term. I explain the equation as whole. I tell you what it means physically, because math is really nothing more than a language to describe physical reality. And who created that math and reality? The Father in heaven, the Mother in heaven. We get, we and with our identities get all upset about that, but it's the source, the universal being created it, and many near NDEers confirm this. Father Rick Wendell said when he was talking to God, God tells him, all of this three-dimensional world is within God. There is nothing outside of God. Everything within this physical universe has to correspond to laws, and God set those laws. They are immutable as God is immutable. None of this, what we see and experience, is an accident. It is intentioned by God. It's 100% correct. And others people say that, like Howard Storm, and there's a lot. And probably when you were out of body, when you were experiencing all that knowledge, that stuff came in and then maybe was dropped off again when you came back into the physical realm. But it's simpler, but in a way very complex when you start thinking about the details. But the details, the foundation of reality, is incredibly simple. So I'll give you the big secret
Yeah,
about the
let's hear it.
universe. What is this universe, this physical one we're in now, this dream type? What is it made of? It's made of something called the ether, which was abandoned in the year 1905 because of an experiment and because of what Einstein said in relation to that experiment and the theory of special relativity. In my book, I get into the details. I could spend a half an hour talking about what went wrong there and how to fix it, and I do explain it all. But basically, there was an experiment that they did to confirm the ether, and it failed to confirm the ether because it
Mhm.
did not detect an ether wind. Our motion through
Right.
space was expected to have a wind that would slow down and speed up light. But what they didn't really realize was light speed was independent of the motion of all emitting objects and receiving objects. It was going to go the speed of light anyway. So their interferometer measurements are going to read the same speed no matter what direction the Earth is moving around the sun, no matter how fast we're moving. It's just going to continually, within our frame of reference, always measure the speed of light the same. Therefore, the experiment was invalid for detecting the motion of the Earth within the ether. But anyway, that and Einstein's disclaimer in the special relativity killed the idea of the ether. But all this universe is made of is space, that ether, which technically speaking is a quasi-elastic solid. Quasi meaning if you apply a force to it like a magnetic field or something, it bends slightly and stretches and twists to match that field shape. That's force. When you remove the magnetic field, space snaps back to a grid, flat Euclidean geometry. Quasi. Elastic means it can move in little ways, stretching and compressing and so forth, and twisting. And solid means that which is continuous. This thing is not made up of parts. It is the foundational field, the fundamental field that Einstein was looking for. So if you want to link this all together into the unified field theory, electromagnetism and gravity emerge as aspects of the single fundamental field, which is the ether. That's what I did in my book. That's what I'm doing with this paper for the motion of particles, which is something Einstein knew had to come into the unified field theory, because we have to explain why particles move. Because if we don't understand this universe at all. Because if particles didn't move of their own accord, the universe would go dark. There would be no way to detect anything. Gravity would cease to function. You wouldn't see stars. It would be completely black and we wouldn't exist. Nothing would exist. Only when this space is formed, which I assume is part of God, maybe the mind of God, and we're within that dream, and this particular dream, this iteration, is this universe that we're in now. And the fundamental field is that field, and everything, all particles, all energy, all mass are made of this thing. They are consubstantial with it, meaning they are of the same thing within it. And so particles move within this space, not displacing it, but transforming it as it moves. It adapts to their shape and becomes the particle as the particle moves within the space. A lot to take in, but it's remarkably simple once you get it. It says to people, it speaks to people when they say, how could this not have been discovered years ago? How did we not realize this? This simple, sensible explanation. The fact is they did. Maxwell, Newton, Lorentz, Einstein all believed in the ether and all believed that there was this fundamental field. We got it wrong now. But back then they had it right, and I picked up on that and compiled it into a complete theory.
Oh, that's fascinating to me. And yeah, I do remember learning in grade school about the experiment that disproved the existence of ether.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm
I
I am shocked that you got that in grade school. Somebody must have been on the ball in your grade school, because physicists, it's a world famous experiment to them.
Mhm.
They all know about it. But the general population in grade school, wow, I'm impressed with whoever did that. That was amazing. So you got that. You're familiar with that very important, probably most important experiment ever conducted in physics.
Yeah, well, I was homeschooled, but I basically just read the textbook, like the science textbook, and I was very interested in things like that. Does dark energy have anything to do with this ether?
Dark energy has a long history, and it was invented to explain the expansion of the universe. And see, and it gets into a whole nasty bunch of stuff that happens. Hubble had a theory that the universe was expanding. And then he did some measurements, and I kind of think he cherry picked the measurements to put in his report so it matched his theory. And they did that again in 1998, and they wanted these other guys won the Nobel Prize for it, but basically wanted to prove that the Big Bang happened. And for some strange reason, the outermost galaxies, the ones far from us, were accelerating away from us as if we were the center of the universe. That's how already that's how you know something's wrong. Whenever the Earth becomes the center of the universe, you've got a flawed theory, because obviously that cannot be. It's just not going to be the right thing.
Right.
And that's part of the theory. Well, all these are going away from us, but they found out later on that's actually not true. But when the astronomers try to put that forward, they get put down. You don't agree with this. This is heresy, blasphemy. Shut up. We're not going to hear it. I don't care what your data is. Dark energy became a thing because they needed a reason for the universe to magically expand. And so dark energy was invented. And it comes about as a result when Einstein heard that maybe the universe is in motion. He did his formulation of gravity with the universe static. Just you look up, it's not really moving this way or that. But now they know it isn't that way. So he added something called the cosmological constant. He put that into his equations. That now gave the number a negative number. And so the universe could expand. And so dark energy came in as a reason for the expansion, that somehow space was just expanding apart somewhere. Not here, because we test here, that's not happening, not locally. Matter of fact, our galactic group, our galaxy and other ones nearby us, are all coming together. We know this for sure. It's been calculated. We're heading towards something called the Great Attractor. It's a gravitational anomaly. It's most likely an immense black hole, and we're all heading toward that at about 1.3 million miles an hour and accelerating toward it. So that's my reason for the acceleration. All these other galaxies, if you look beyond where they're accelerating, you're going to find another galactic giant, a great attractor. And sure enough, a lot of astronomers are plotting the universe all around us, and they're finding these regions of immense gravity. I call them Titan-sized black holes. But that, to get back to the point, that's where dark energy comes from. I personally see no evidence of its existence. It was assumed to exist on a false assumption that the universe is expanding. And in fact, what I found is that in reality, it's collapsing. And we're in the end stage. Not, there's a whole argument there that, could be debated. I would love to debate some physicists on that
Mm.
and use their own evidence to prove them wrong.
That's fascinating. So we're contracting, not expanding. And so I've heard you speak in your other interviews about your intelligent design theory.
Yeah,
And I mean, we could talk about this for another couple of hours. I know we probably don't have the time to really dig into it, but what would you say that this is all about? Like this whole experience that's going on here with the physical universe, and where is it heading?
I think we're in one of many infinite amounts of universes. This particular one, the rumor has it, is this Earth experience is one of the toughest there is out there. And I got to tell you, I think it is tough. It's a real hard experience. I wouldn't argue that. Do I know that for sure? No, because I'm in the body here, right? We're cranked into this limited knowledge system that our soul is connected to a brain that interfaces with eyes, ears, nose. This is all our sensory input, unless we have extrasensory inputs, like some gifted people have, you being one of them. I have, ordinary access, but This universe is a playground, a particular place where we can experience challenges, good and evil, joy and suffering, all of that. It's all a part of the game. And this is a stage, and we're set upon this stage, and we act out our roles. And hopefully, we're all dealt this hand of cards. So we play our cards as best we can. You can win with a pair of deuces if you know how to play your hand, and you can bluff, and you can still win the game with what you're dealt if you play those cards right. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to win the hand, get this information out there with what I was dealt in my particular circumstances and situation. That was part of my life plan. So we're all executing a life plan here. Very much like you said in some of your videos. I really wouldn't disagree with what you're saying, that there's an ultimate life plan, an ultimate universal plan, and we are a part of this. I still scratch my head trying to get more details on about, well, why do we even have to have all this? Why can't we just live happily up in the heavenly realm without all this hubbub? But I think there must be a reason, but I can't quite get to it other than this is part of an experience that we need to have in order to learn, to grow. It's my best guess.
Wow. And you mentioned winning the game with no matter what hand you have. What would we have to do to win the game?
You have to remember what your life plan is and go with that. Try to see what happens in the material realm is we're tempted by our bodies, our minds, our culture, everything to accomplish things based on some material desire. Our desires get in the way a lot of our greatest future, our first best destiny. What you have to do is surrender to God, to the universe, and say, I want to do whatever it is that I was meant to come here and do. And search your feelings, your intuition, and try and listen like you did, like I did. Pray to your spirit guides for guidance. They will help guide you. Once you make that opening and say, this is what I don't want to do what I want to do to get rich and famous or something like that, or I want a new car, or whatever it is. I want to do what helps the world, helps God's plan. I want to do my part, whatever it is I agreed to do, what I raised my right hand and swore to do before I was born. When you do that, the universe says, great. Now we got things going, and they will begin to send you messages and guidance and help along the way. Within there's some sort of a constraint there that they just can't just grab everybody and get in their face and tell, now do this, now do that. You have free will. That's part of the biggest part of the game. It's choosing wisely with your free will.
I love that. Thank you so much. Mark, thank you for being willing to share with us from your own personal journey today. I feel like an hour was too short, like so
Yeah.
short to really get into your work. There's so many interesting topics we could talk about, and maybe we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to talk about the theory of planet formation. That's a Nobel Prize winner. It's in my book.
Mm.
There's a lot of interesting topics that I can explain at the layman's level that when you hear it, it will make sense. I guarantee it.
But right now, I'd like to give you a chance to share where the viewers can find you and learn more about your book.
I have a website called www.super-relativity.com. That's the name of my theory, super relativity. Super-relativity.com. On the front page, I got a little set of links, buttons you could just click on and go directly to the most sought after things, my blog page, my YouTube page, where you can get my book on Amazon, or you can order it through my website and I'll give you a signed copy and send it to you. all that basic information and links to my research papers. And as soon as I finish this next one, I'll be uploading it and I'll update my website, and that link will be there. This particular paper I'm working on, people, you don't want to miss this. It's a real goodie. So that's everything's there on www.super-relativity.com.
All right, I'll have those links in the description. Thank you so much, Mark.
You're welcome. Enjoyed it.
Thank you for watching the Love Covered Life podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, share this video with your friends, and comment with your thoughts and opinions. And check the description box for the links to my TikTok and Instagram, where I share the more personal side of my life, my website, where I share my paintings and merch, and also the Be a Guest link for anybody who's interested in sharing their story. Be loved, be happy, be at peace, and thank you for watching.